Hello, friends. I'm Zaoyungshen, professor in finance at the University of International Business and Economics. I'm also director for French Economy Studies for Academy of China Open Economy Studies. I'm also doctoral supervisor at the University of La Sorbonne, Paris. So it is a great pleasure for me to have been invited to join this great Gggf forum by Edu News. The topic of my speech today is China's environment protection and new energy industries from a European perspective. You know, the COVID-19 has exerted a significant negative influences on global economy, not only on developed countries, but also on developing countries. It means no matter how developed or how rich you are and will be faced to COVID. On the contrary to our common sense, the pandemic influences are more negative for developed economies than for developing economies. So you will see like the economy for USA and European countries, their economy has been seriously influenced by COVID-19. But the African countries, as developing economies, they have been less influenced by this pandemic crisis. So you know, it is probably, in my opinion, it is because of the high degree of concentration and connection. We'll look at this chart of GDP of OECD members. So you can find that for Asian countries, there are only the Eastern Asian countries, there are only 2 state members inside OECD. It is Japan and Korea. Then we have other 2 Asian countries at the west side. So only 4 state members of Asia and 3 state members from South America. The rest, it means 30 member states are European countries. So from this chart, you can find that the negative influences of COVID-19 is really severe, and you can find that for example, this for the country of Turkey, is for the single hit scenario, and for the double hit scenario. So you will find most of OECD member states have been negatively economically influenced by this pandemic. Then we will look at the second chart of GDP drop at the second semester of last year, of 2020. I have chosen 6 countries, which are China, Korea, USA, Japan, Eurozone, and UK. So we will find that among these 6 countries, only China has maintained a positive growth rate in this period of time. Then it is South Korea. South Korea is negative, but it is not so serious. like USA and the Eurozone, the GDP growth is negative, is minus between 3% to 4% for South Korea. And the USA is almost 10%. It's always minus, okay, always negative growth at minus 10%. Japan is like USA. Eurozone is more is worse, even worse than USA and Japan. Eurozone's average growth rate is negative, also negative, minus 12, between 12 and 13%. Finally, is UK. UK is the worst student among these 6 economies that I have chosen for our study. UK has realized a negative growth rate at minus 23, around 23%. Okay, in the same period. So the roadmap of my speech is, after the COVID-19, how to recover the economy, because then a central issue for policy deciders of most countries in the world. And I suppose that after COVID-19, the green industry can be a solution post-COVID, which concerns especially 2 fields. One is environment protection. The second is new industry, new energy industries. And we will study this topic from the European perspective. European perspective, because I have studied and worked in Paris for more than 15 years. So I know much better Europe than other continents in the world. So the first part of my speech is in the field of environment protection, EU versus China. The first point is development stages. So EU for their member states, almost all the member states of EU are developed economies, or we could also industrialize the countries, and most OE member states are European countries that we have mentioned. Just as I mentioned, there are 30 countries, over 37 countries of OECD are European countries. Okay. Another example is France versus China. We can cite the example of GDP per capita. For France is 38.6 thousand US dollars versus 10.5 thousand US dollars for China. Okay, so French guys, they are 3 times richer, more than 3 times richer than Chinese people. So it is the first point. The second is, for China is still a developing country. We could also industrializing country. It is not so poor country as in the history. China is already a middle income economy, and we will call China as an advanced developing country. So it is between EU and China. And the second point is inside EU, there is a regional homogeneity, relatively speaking. It means that between among different member states of EU, of course they are different. There is differences. There are differences, high, big, or small. But relatively speaking, their differences are not so high. The gap is not so huge. But for China, China is a big country. Of course, it is more continent than a country. There are different regions, 7 regions we will speak later in this speech. So I think in China there is a high degree of regional heterogeneity, means between for Yangtze Delta and the northwest region of China, you can find the gap, economic gap, and social gap, and other field gap are really huge. So it is the regional homogeneity for EU versus regional heterogeneity for China. Well, for different stages between EU and China, they are not only economic but also social. Means EU and China are at different economic development stages and social development stages. Then we will, after the EU versus China in environment, we will ask the question of environment or development. For EU, so EU member states, development can be together with environment. Means they can develop their economy in protecting the environment, so it is feasible. But even for some countries, European countries, they can, for example, in France, they can give priorities to environment before economic development. Environmental protection before economic development. So it is a European case. For China, it was development before environment until several years ago. But nowadays it is in China it is development and environment. We will try to deal with two things, two targets together. So which one is more important, economic development or environmental protection? It is a real dilemma especially for developing economies like China. Then we will talk about the relocation. Relocation of factories, it is a traditional topic for many scholars in economics, in industries. For example, in the European, most of the European countries, almost all the polluting industries have been relocated from Europe to developing countries, or the third world, as called by Chairman Mao. Hence, the environment before the target of environment protection before economic development can be feasible. For example, in France, they have well done in protecting environment. At the meantime, they have maintained a relatively reasonable economic growth rate. For China, it is personally, I think it is, China was one of the major countries which main polluting industries have been relocated from developed countries, from Europe countries, from North American countries, from Japan, from South Korea to China, for example, and to other developing countries. Hence, I suppose the target of environment means environment protection before economic development is not really feasible. Then we will talk about the rule of pollution relocation. So I mean, when we talk about the relocation of industries from one country, one developed country to a developing country, it is in fact relocation of pollution from developed country to developing country. So the rule of pollution relocation, the first rule is from developed economies to less developed economies. For example, from European EU, USA, Japan, Korea to China. That is an example. So either for different regions in one country, like in China, there is also industrial relocation from. So even in China, from different regions, from, for example, from delta of Yangtze Delta to the region of northwest of China, it is also the same scenario. It's the relocation of industries from the developed region to a less developed region, and it is also the relocation of pollution. Ceteris paribus, especially when technologies for significant pollution abatement are not yet affordable. This kind of situation can take place every day. Hence, the relocation of factories is not only a relocation, is only a relocation of pollution. The third point is the environmental protection versus EU versus USA. Among OECD member states, the Americans are very different from the Europeans in the field of environmental protection. USA is the country which pollutes most in the world. Their wasting behaviors due to, I suppose, they are due to low prices of commodities in USA. So we shall ask first, the first polluting country to act first and do more. Comparing with USA, personally, I think China's target for emission peak and carbon neutrality are too radical and not so realistic. The fourth point is in order to deal with problem of environment, I suppose that we have to establish a new lifestyle and a new science of economics. We live in a modern consumption society. We produce much more than we need. There are everywhere temptations of consumption society. There is everywhere we are controlled and manipulated by the power of capital. So new lifestyle and new science of economics are really essential to deal with the problem of environment that we face today. part two of my speech is new energy. In the field of new energy, also EU versus China. First is the energy composition. We will look at different energy compositions. For example, I will cite only three examples: France, Germany, and China. We will look at these three charts. The first is France energy composition. Second is Germany energy composition. The third is China energy composition. You can look at the three figures. Then for France, in the energy composition, nuclear occupies more than 70%. According to the Bill 2015 of energy transition for green growth, France will reduce the nuclear from 75% to 50% till 2030 and improve renewable energies from 13.7% of 2012 to 32% And for the coal, as promised by French President Emmanuel Macron, France will shut off all the coal electricity plants till 2021. Then we will look at Germany. The nuclear goes also down from 25% in 2010 to 13.1% in 2017, and the coal goes down from 43.4% to 39.2%. Then in China, the coal goes also down from 80.8% in 2010 to 71% in 2017. The solar PV goes up from 1.2% to 6.5%. So then there are three figures, three charts that you can look at. After these three charts, we will look at one example of electric cars. Recent development for electric cars in China is really fantastic. China is the largest market for new energy cars, including electric and hybrid cars. More than 1.4 million of cars sold in China of new electric cars sold in China, occupying 5.6% of all the sale volume in 2020. The coal in China goes down from 80.8% in 2010 to 71% in 2017, as just mentioned. But the coal in China is still weighed at 491.77 trillion kilowatt hour, over 777.91 trillion kilowatt hour, equals to 63.2% in 2020. And a weight of China's coal over world's coal equals to 52.2% in 2020. So here I give a link. You can visit by this link for hundreds of coal electricity plants in 7 different regions of China: the northeast, the east, the central China, the northwest, southeast, and the south of China. Then we will look at the electricity and inequalities. My question is, where does electricity come from in China? for example, development of electric cars in China. It seems a nice solution for environmental protection. In reality, it is good for Beijing, but not good for Shanxi province, for example. Shanxi province is one of the major producing provinces. Okay. Again, we go back to the problem of pollution, relocation from the Chinese developed region to another less developed region. The problem with Chinese internal, interregional inequalities has been generated. So then we will look at another solution is hydrogen. I suppose that hydrogen can be one of the best choices for new energies in China. Electric cars, personally, I don't think it is a successful case. We will not enter into details. Hydrogen can be a good solution. Air Liquide is one of the most advanced French enterprises in the sector of hydrogen, has started its collaboration with China, okay, to develop new energy, especially in hydrogen, in the field of hydrogen. We can settle the problem of cost. If we can settle the problem of cost is really fundamental to deal with the problem of new energy. Okay. Now, this is a conclusion. In a word, as a developing country, China has already made sufficient efforts in environment protection, personally I think, in my opinion, and exploration of new energy industries. Ceteris paribus, environment and before development is feasible for EU, but not really feasible for China. Then different energy compositions, EU versus China, determines different energy behaviors, EU versus China. Electric cars are not a successful case due to relocation, pollution, and the generation of inequalities in China. So I don't think it is a successful case. Hydrogen can be one of the best choices for new energies in China if we can set the problem of cost, because the cost of hydrogen today is so high, we cannot commercialize all the hydrogen products. Finally, let's think about a new lifestyle and a new science of economics if we want to have a sustainable development so as to keep the balance and harmony in our planet. All my point of view, so all the content of my PPT and speech in this forum represents only my personal points of view, and no institution is concerned. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.